and Emperor Jones. So we talked about James Weldon Johnson, a man of color. He may have contributed some negative things to the ideas of Haiti and what it meant and represented to people. Um, but we also got this other piece of work around the same period of time. So real quickly, you have Eugene O'Neill. So white male. He goes to Honduras looking for gold, doesn't find gold, gets malaria instead. Pretty bad trade-off. Comes back to the United States, hangs out around with a bunch of people of different backgrounds, like lots of people really into art, the literati type of people, also circus folk. And during this time, he hears about Haiti. He gets the idea to write The Emperor Jones. From hearing about Haiti, he transposes his own events and own experiences, sort of, that he's inspired by, that took place in Honduras. And you get The Emperor Jones. I find this just really interesting and fascinating because you have a black character in Brutus Jones who is the stand-in for the white writer from his experiences in a non-black nation. There are lots of levels and layers here. O'Neill conceived of Brutus Jones not as a quote-unquote African-American character, but as a quote-unquote full-blooded Negro. And that marker was as wholly ambitious with respect to national identity as it was absolute with respect to race. That comes from page 198 of Rinda's work. So Rinda's basically arguing that the character Jones represents powerful manhood embodied by a black man, and much like we saw in Johnson's work, that is to appeal to white audiences. And Rinda's chapter basically solidified everything I've ever needed to understand about why ideas of primitivism are so attractive to white culture. I swear to you, I'm 32, I've studied this stuff my whole life, have no idea, never fully gotten this until this quote. This is from page 211. European Americans' attraction to primitive themes therefore fashioned a new chapter in the history of American racism. Attending to Afro-American and Afro-Caribbean themes, U.S. whites could depart from a tradition of racist hostility while maintaining a fundamental commitment to racial hierarchies and essential racial identities. They could criticize their own personalities through their fascination with primitive others, but in doing so, they would further reinforce some of the very tenets of the racist traditions they appeared to be rejecting. So, I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. You take a character, you make this character here a black male, you put him into a primitive place in society. He becomes the leader, the strong leader of that group. That group is primitive, and they are able to leave behind their history of white on black racism from a U.S. context, and are able to, look at somebody else and not even know that they're carrying on all of their racist hostilities while viewing this story. And I think that this is really powerful and fascinating when you consider the fact that Rinda talks about how Emperor Jones was much more popular with white people than it was with black people. So I want to, before I get to my second question, I want to quickly just sort of fold in some of Rinda's concepts with The Emperor Jones, the movie that everybody watched. Number one, just throw this out, Paul Robeson, who played the lead. I used to work for a communist law firm in Detroit, Michigan, and Paul Robeson was a communist. And the firm I worked for was pretty famous. And Paul Robeson's pictures were all over the walls because he used to work with the people that founded the firm, and he was a close friend. But anyway, back to the movie. I mean, the movie is, as you've seen, it's pretty interesting. You have a black character that is assertive and strong and confident and sexy. Um, and I mean, he's a lot of things that if he were a white lead, you would find racially and socially acceptable in America, right? But this is, a completely different time. And so I can see why it's really groundbreaking in some ways. I mean, he feels confident enough to, you know, quote unquote, talk back to a white person. So it's like kind of breaks out of the unequal relationship mold that we're used to seeing. So in that way, I think it's really interesting. But at the same time, the man is, you know, he's a prisoner that gets out. He's killed someone. Um, that feeds into, I think, ideas of stereotypes of like the violent black male body, the mandingo sort of, which also comes into play, I think, with the sexiness of him. I mean, the shirtlessness, the black sexy body outside, which you see at the end of the movie in the breakdown, long breakdown scene, which also reminded me of stories of the history of looking at black people and the black mind as something much more fragile. It was really common with black women. Um, I think uh, Alex Haley's sequel to Roots deals with this idea of, but he was dealing with women. Um, but ultimately, and you've also got this. There's beating drums at points in the movie. There are primitive cultures, people talking. There's not a big distinction. I thought this was really interesting between really almost any group of black people. In a way, the film, and I think from what I gathered from the article about the script itself, O'Neill sort of saw all black life as universal. Um, so, I guess what I'm trying to say is, for anything that he broke the mold on, right? He's also adding to stereotype. And now he's doing it in a way that is taking us out of the US context and is allowing viewers to be racist and patriarchal toward Haitian society by putting themselves in a black character's shoes. So one step forward, right? You've got an advancement, but an advancement at what costs? There's this idea that also that Jones's lack of national identity, Brutus Jones, Emperor Jones, of a black American going into Haiti and becoming a leader of native peoples, that provides space then for white people to stand there. And I think that that's interesting, but that seems to me that would come at great cost to the Haitian people. It's like trading one black person for another. You just are culturally moving the same stereotype just over to a group that you weren't used to judging or stereotyping because they weren't part of your life. And so we see in both Johnson's work and in his writings and in O'Neill's work, we see how Haiti is being used. In both cases, it's being used through appeals to primitivism and paternalism. And while it's both pieces make interesting arguments, at the end of the day, they're also chucking people under the bus at the same time. So I think my second question is, do you think that Emperor Jones is advanced enough? Does it break enough molds that it overcomes any of its ills? Or should we not even judge a piece of art that way? Should we look at a piece of art for its advancements and also for its, its steps back? Do we judge it differently because it's written by a white man? Does that matter? I think this is a question that many artists deal with all the time. We've seen it recently with a white artist, painter, who painted a picture of Emmett Till, and her work was protested. So, and also, does it matter that we've got a white person and a person of color at the same time that are making very similar judgments and very similar calls, although in different ways, and that are at the same time racially hurting Haitians. So, really, all in all, I thought this was a great piece, really interesting. Um, I didn't do a PowerPoint because I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of afraid of them. 32 years old, I've never like really fully made a PowerPoint. Started to do it, got super upset and nervous, couldn't make it work the way I wanted to, and then like an old person, I basically then I've become my parents. So thank you, thanks for listening. See you on the forums.